the Republican candidate, Cleave Simpson. And the Democratic candidate, Vivian Smotherman, to the stage. Thank you both for joining us today and for your willingness to serve in the best part of the state of Colorado. Before we begin, we'd like to go over some of the ground rules. Do y'all have memorized yet? Anyway, candidates should focus on ideas, not personalities. Candidates should be courteous and should not make inflammatory statements. Disrespectful or attack speech or profane language will not be tolerated. Candidates may not display a prop of any kind. Candidates must strictly adhere to the time limits of each section of the debate. I reserve the right to cut off candidates who exceed the time limit or to redirect a candidate if their remarks are not pertinent to the elected office. You both agree?
I do.
I do.
Cleave, Vivian, thank you. Additionally, we ask all audience members exhibit professional decorum during these debates. Limited applause is allowed, but unruly outbursts or disruptions are prohibited. The debate moderator may penalize the candidate's time if their supporters are unable to maintain decorum. Audience members should also be aware that these debates will be filmed and live streamed for public viewing. With that, we'll begin with opening remarks. A coin toss was held backstage, and candidate Simpson has chosen to begin opening remarks. Cleave.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Pleasure to be here with everybody this afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you to Club20 and particularly to Vivian for throwing your name in the hat. And I have a lot of respect for anybody that's willing to try to do this. And a special thank you to my lovely wife, Kathy, who's somewhere in the audience. Our 41-year marriage has survived the last 4 years of the General Assembly. A little bit about me. I'm native Coloradan. I was born and raised in Alamosa, farm and ranch. I'm the fourth generation of my family to farm and ranch in the valley. Spent the bulk of my life, the majority of it, in Alamosa in the San Luis Valley. Although I was a Colorado School of Mines graduate, a mining engineer, and spent some time away in Texas and Australia working in surface coal mines. And look, I think about what inspired me to run for office back in 2020 and then seek re-election now. And it largely is just focused on the relevance of rural Colorado. It was my passion to go there. And it really started, the initial focus was really surrounded around water. There's a clear indication that the next decade or two is going to shape Colorado, and you run the risk of fundamentally changing what Colorado looks like if we don't have a strong voice and representation about how water is dealt with in this state. The growing demand on the Front Range and the shrinking supplies on the western slope in the San Luis Valley and the Arkansas and the South Platte are going to be challenging. So it's really important to be there, to be strong about rural Colorado, centered around water, but it goes above and beyond that. Healthcare, education, ag, a passion of mine, economic development. Those are all things that are important to help build a really strong rural community and a level of resiliency and relativity at the Colorado General Assembly. And I'd love the opportunity to continue the passion for representing rural Colorado that I've had for the last 4 years.
Thank you, Cleave. Vivian, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. And thank you to Club20, thank you to Macy University, and thank you to the Sentinel. I used to deliver papers for them when I was young. And of course, thank you to Senator Simpson for not only serving, but being just such an honorable candidate through this whole thing. It's been a pleasure. The most common question I've been asked on the road is, why am I running? Well, Marion Cortez sits on the board for Southwest Memorial Hospital. After a series of funding cuts, they're barely staying afloat. They're losing doctors, they're losing healthcare professionals, and that's the only critical care access facility we have in that area. It needs to stay open. Sandra in Center, Colorado, runs an after-school program that has lost funding consistently. At this point, they're not going to be able to make it to the end of the year without help. She needs help. And Bev, up in Silverton, and her co-workers in the archive office told me that they have a member of their community, a longtime member of their community, who is taken ill to a point that they need home health care in a city that has no access to home health care. So these are the problems that I've heard about as I've traveled around. Rural Colorado problems are problems our neighbors on the Front Range can't even begin to comprehend. To overcome this, we need a voice that is stronger, a voice that is louder, and a voice that is more persuasive and more responsive to the people of this district. I have experience, global experience, cultural experience, education. I have all the skills for this position, and I'm ready to put to work for the people of this district.
Thank you, Vivian. So we'll now move into the question and answer portion of the debate. Each candidate will be asked to respond to 4 questions, and I just got them, so if I blow them, it's on me. The question is submitted by Club 20 members and our partners. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question, and then the candidate who goes first will also have a 30-second rebuttal. The candidate that went first in opening remarks will offer the first response to the first question. So the first question is for you, Cleave. Access to affordable health care is a critical concern for many residents, particularly in rural areas. What initiatives will you champion to improve health care access and affordability for constituents in your district? You have 1 minute.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Murphy. Look, this is a complicated issue that I rely on those folks in the field with the expertise to bring forward. Championed, modernization of the Physician Assistants Practice Act, again in an effort to increase accessibility to PAs in rural Colorado. Horror stories about how under the prior Practice Act, they just lost the ability to be able to deliver services that they had been delivering for quite some time. Last session, Senator Roberts and I passed legislation about remote patient monitoring. Any number of bills and initiatives about trying to improve accessibility to quality health care at an affordable rate. It's a big challenge for our community. There isn't a silver bullet, but I've been open and engaged with those folks that have the expertise to help advance that effort.
Thank you. Candidate Smotherman, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good.
Okay, great.
I'm good. Rural healthcare. Everybody's talking about it. We need solutions, but it's not an isolated problem that you can look at by itself. When I talk about rural healthcare and the things that we need to do, we have to understand the problem. We are losing doctors, we are losing nurses, we are losing healthcare professionals in these rural areas because, 1, they cannot afford to live because our housing is too expensive. 2, our schools are not up to par. Our schools and our education system needs to be better if we want these young professionals to come into our communities, raise their children there, and keep them there. These are issues that, if we address them all together, we can improve the lives of everybody in this district. Okay? Healthcare is essential. I mentioned that in my opening remarks. We don't have enough people. And we have people out here with real problems. Okay? In my community, we've lost Planned Parenthood recently because they don't have professionals to serve them. Okay? I have other communities that are losing services. I have a community that doesn't have a pharmacy.
Thank you. Thank you. Cleave, you have 30 seconds.
Just appreciate Vivian's perspective about this is a big nut to crack that's going to take a collaborative effort and engagement with lots of folks. My own personal experience, there was a period in my life where my family, we had to make choices about, we could not afford health insurance. Self-employed, had to make that choice and that decision about not offering that backstop in the essence of insurance, and that heightens my sense of importance about and a sense of urgency about getting this accomplished.
Thank you. Thank you. Vivian, question 2 is coming your way first. As Colorado continues to grow, economic development is essential for maintaining community vitality and creating job opportunities. What specific policies would you support to promote economic development in Senate District 6? And how do you plan to engage with local businesses and communities in this process? You have 1 minute.
I think a pragmatic approach is usually my solution to most things. We have, as you said, we have a diverse community that we're dealing with a lot of businesses that have a lot of interests. I don't want to put business interests ahead of the interests of the people that are working, the working class people that need salaries that are capable of paying their mortgage, capable of paying their health insurance, capable of paying their food security, well, giving them food security and housing security. We need to make sure that we're supporting these businesses as best we can, and we have to make sure that these businesses are also supporting our members in the community, because otherwise we're going to lose. Like, we already have communities like Telluride, like Durango, where we cannot have workforce housing. It's not affordable. You cannot live in that community. We have people in Durango that have to live in New Mexico because that's the closest way they can afford it. So we need to address, again, all of these problems together. Encourage business, but we need businesses that are going to pay their employees properly.
All right. Cleave, shall I repeat the question?
No, I think I get it, about economic development and the importance of that. You know, particularly in our rural communities, there's such a stark difference between how economic development unfolds on the Front Range versus what happens in rural Colorado. Was happy to sponsor a bill last year, an extension of the Rural Jumpstart program. There are opportunities for the government to step in and provide some assistance to help stand things up that will ultimately generate more tax revenue for the state of Colorado. That Rural Jumpstart program was really important. You know, I just stay engaged with Region 9 Economic Development Council, the Upper Rio Grande Economic Development Corporation. There are a number of these entities around Senate District 6 that are really active in this space. Routinely writing letters of support for them and trying to advance grant programs and more initiatives. And again, just playing that role of being an advocate for those folks and being engaged, and again, trying to create a path forward where we see true sustainable economic development in rural Colorado.
Thank you. Vivian, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the federal investment that has come towards this district from the Biden administration in their last 4 years, because that has really spurred a lot of growth for a lot of industries. I'm going to highlight Montezuma County, where let's see, Mancos Conservation District received $55,000. They received $500,000 for repaving of Highway 145, $200,000 for the Cortez Safe Streets program, $6.6 million for Four Corners State to repair US Highway 160 all the way to Aztec. So we've had some money come in, and it's helping.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving to question 3. Cleve, questions coming to you first. The deployment of high-speed internet throughout western Colorado is critical to supporting schools, small businesses, as well as rural hospitals. Is there a role for local governments to play in deploying broadband to high-cost areas? And if not, how should we work with providers to incentivize them to build out those high-cost areas?
Thanks, Michael. I absolutely believe local governments can play an active role in this and help pushing that, what's really been characterized as like the final mile, the last piece of the puzzle in the high-speed internet. I live 6 miles south of Alamosa, 3/4 of a mile off of Highway 285. I still don't have high-speed internet at my house. There are lots of parts of my community in Senate District 6 that, after all this period of time, the Colorado Broadband Office, all this effort, federal dollars, we still lack that piece to kind of solve the puzzle. Colorado, particularly the Broadband Office, celebrates success that 99% of Coloradans now have access to high-speed internet. I've challenged them to go, instead of measuring this across the state, measure it for me county by county. Which counties are at 70%? It's easy to say 99% when 80% of the population lives on the eastern front of the state on the Front Range. And there's this, again, it's just a typical gap for rural Colorado gets missed in this conversation.
Vivian, same question. Would you like me to repeat it, or you got it?
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good. And again, Senator Simpson nails it. This is a big problem. It's something that our communities all need to be involved in. The municipalities be involved in. The counties need to be involved in. Again, we've gotten a lot of federal funding to assist with this, but it's a team effort. We have some amazing county commissioners down in La Plata County that have taken this money, and they are working diligently to get this broadband internet all the way across southern and southwestern New Mexico. And our county commissioner is now the nation's leading expert on doing these kind of operations, and he's made incredible progress, and people are really happy with the results. But it's only because we have these private-public partnerships and we keep them alive. We make sure we have funding and we make sure that people are working.
Thank you. Cleave, 30 seconds.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. There is an example of how well this worked. It's in Montrose Delta Electric Association and their efforts and their collaborative engagement with the community and the federal government to really secure enough funds to set up what I think is really the model for success in rural parts of the state.
Thank you. Moving to the final question, question number 4. Candidate Smotherman, coming your way. Most of the western United States can be characterized as a desert climate. In a desert, water is the most important resource. Colorado provides for 6 river basins that flow out of our great state and provide water to other states. What policies do you support that protect the use of this finite resource in this arid West? Who would you work with to understand the problem and support the community that could elect you? Period.
First and foremost, I'll work with Senator Simpson. He's been on the Water Conservation Board there in the Rio Grande for quite some time, and he has a lot of experience in that. And that's the kind of expertise we need. There are a number of those people around. Obviously, Colorado's water interest, there are a lot of stakeholders here, including our 2 tribes, the Southern Ute and the Ute Mountain Ute, who are desperate to have their rights recognized and have that taken care of. So, with water, we have to listen to the experts. We have to put policies forward that promote conservation. I know Colorado State University is doing some amazing things along those lines, helping our farmers and ranchers grow more efficiently with less water, having drones fly over fields so that they can spot how much water is needed and they can target those areas efficiently. That's us doing everything we can to save our water, which Colorado has a long history of doing. We have a history of preserving our resources. And as others have talked about on this stage today, it's our downstream partners that have abused our willingness to be conserved.
Thank you. Thank you. Cleave?
Really, I have a minute to talk about this?
Yeah, I know. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Quickly, I'll try to summarize this real quickly. Is Colorado is really visionary in this respect, all the way back to including in our Constitution the doctrine of prior appropriation, Delph Carpenter and the work in interstate compacts, 1969 Water Rights Determination and Administration Act, Russ George's Water for the 21st Century Act, and then more recently, the development of the Colorado Water Plan. I'll take a step backwards in Russ George's efforts really set the framework for the process to resolve these kind of really challenging issues in the state of Colorado. Sets up basin roundtables. It sets up the Interbasin Compact Committee and a voice for people to come in from municipal, agriculture, recreational, environmental on a regular basis to try to hash out what does the future look like. And I've planted the seeds. If I'm successful in re-election, it's time to think about water for the next century. What does that look like in Colorado?
Thank you, Cleave. Vivian, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, again, when we're talking about policy, we're talking about conservation and we're talking about protecting what we have. We have amazing teams of people that have been looking at this problem day in and day out for as long as they can remember. Colorado has been very successful. Colorado will continue to be very successful because everybody in this room understands how important that resource is. If it were up to me, I would charge Texas every bit as much for our water as we're paying for their oil.
That's good. All right, now we're going to move into the cross-examination portion of the debate. Each candidate will be given 4 minutes to ask questions of their opponent on matters pertinent to the race or office. Please be reminded that questions should be pertinent to the office that you are running for and should not include any attacking speech, profane language. I reserve the right to redirect if there are any remarks that are not pertinent to this elected office. So, candidate Simpson, you will begin cross-examination. You have four minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Vivian, it's a pleasure being on the stage with you and in this endeavor. My question to you really comes from some comments, and thanks for coming to Alamosa and the Alamosa Citizen and doing a podcast. But there were some comments in the podcast I would seek some clarity around. You talked about Tabor a little bit. And this is almost a paraphrase, but a lot of talk about Tabor in 30 years and what to do about it. I think always this conversation about funding Colorado property has to start with a review and adjustment of Tabor somehow. If we could get rid of it, would be ideal. That would be a long ballot fight, but I'm prepared for that fight if we can do it. Do you want to expand a little bit on your opposition to Tabor? And I'll just leave it at that for right now.
No, that's a fantastic question. I really do appreciate it. Tabor, as we know, is a law that we put in place over 30 years ago. In that time, no other state has ever tried anything as ridiculous as our Tabor has been for us. Now, what has happened over the years is that because of that formula, we have consistently underfunded so many programs. Okay? That's why Sandra can't afford to keep her after-school program running because of Tabor. Our schools are underfunded. Our teachers are among the lowest paid in the nation, especially adjusted for inflation, because of Tabor. We don't have the money. It's an outdated formula, and it needs to be addressed. The other issue I have with Tabor is that it is ends up being a regressive tax. If you're in a community like Durango or Telluride or Mountain Village, and you have a community that has a lot of money, then all these nickel and dime ballot bills and mill levies that they put on, you can afford them and you're going to vote for them. If you're in a poor community like Manassas or Center and your school district comes and says, hey, we need more money, you're not in a position to put it up there. Your community just can't afford it. So we have a system that is allowing the rich communities, the wealthy communities, to continue to support their citizens while the poor communities continue to fall farther and farther behind. And that is affecting all of us.
I would follow up and argue that it's not about how much money we generate, it's the priorities that the General Assembly puts in those spaces. With my 4 years in the General Assembly, even in a minority role, trying to advocate to make sure we fully fund K through 12 education. It wasn't until this session finally there was enough fortitude and political will to fully fund K through 12 education. My argument is it's not about more taxes. Do we really want to become California East if we lift those Tabor restrictions and allow the General Assembly to assess taxes free will? From the budget, the Colorado State budget in 2019-2020, total was $32.5 billion. The budget we approved last session was $43.7 billion. In 5 years was a 34% increase in the total budget for the state of Colorado. I just argue that it's not about increase in revenue, it's about being very mindful and setting priorities, and I think the legislature, in my tenure there, the legislature's not done a really good job of prioritizing. So, any follow-up?
Yeah, I would just say that I do respect that position, but I think, as I'm saying, it goes a lot farther than just dismantling Tabor, because at the same time, we can eliminate all of these other mill levies and other taxes that we're paying extra for, so that we can go back to just one tax, and that funds our entire state, and we don't have every community. It's going to be a big process. We need to eliminate a lot of taxes so that we can just go through one central government and make sure that everybody is funded adequately, and as you said, prioritize the right programs.
Okay, we're going to run out of time, so I'll just leave it at that. We'll just leave Tabor on the shelf.
So Vivian, you now have 4 minutes to ask Cleave questions.
All right, thank you. Again, thank you, Senator Simpson. Substance abuse and mental health issues are consistently brought to my attention as I've traveled this district. They're a major concern of the people of SD6. Alamosa alone has the second highest rate of drug overdose deaths in the state between 2019 and 2022. Despite this, you have repeatedly voted against measures to address substance abuse. What do you say to Barb, my friend in Durango, a retired healthcare worker living on Social Security who is struggling to support her son who battles addiction in a community that does not have the resources to support him?
Well, I would argue that's an absolute mischaracterization. The 4 years I've been there have been really actively involved in behavioral health issues and substance use disorder. There was a challenge last session about a bill, yet another bill about substance use disorders. And if you go to the General Assembly website and you just Google search substance use disorders, there are pages of, since 2016, more and more efforts, I would argue at times not focused and directed at solving the problem. Obviously, we haven't solved the problem. I was invited to serve in my freshman year after the term ended, after the session ended, in the interim. Who is now Congresswoman Pedersen was chair of a committee and asked me to serve on a committee about transforming the behavioral health system in Colorado. The General Assembly had set aside, appropriated $500 million to do this. So I spent the summer engaged with people to come in and testify about transforming the behavioral health system. And at the end of it, I sat with Senator Pedersen then and said, look, this is not my field of expertise, but I'm passionate. I know that suicide rates and death by overdose and families impacted by opioids are disproportionately higher in rural Colorado. It struck a chord that I need to be engaged and figure this process out. So we spent the summer doing that. We have $500 million at the end. I said, Brittany, Senator Pedersen, I don't mean to oversimplify this, but Colorado does not offer enough physical bed space to treat people. We don't have a workforce. If you had the bed spaces, you don't have a workforce to provide that to them. And lastly, we don't do enough in the preventative space. I think you could take $500 million and put it in any one of those buckets, and I'm not sure we could solve the problem. There's a challenge here in Colorado about trying to fix the behavioral health system and substance use disorder. I sponsored the 988 suicide hotline. Like the very first bill, I stood up. And then the next year, stood up the Behavioral Health Administration, was a prime sponsor with Senator Pete Lee about this was going to be the mechanism that really transformed Colorado and fixed us, put us in a much better place. We're still in that space. We still haven't solved that problem. The commissioner will be in Durango on October the 9th or 10th with me to talk about where the new commissioner, where we're at in this process and how do you change Colorado. We all of us are too close to somebody that's committed suicide, somebody that's had bad experience in substance use disorder. I mean, I don't want to go into detail, but my family personally has been impacted by that. So it was really, a motivation for me, Vivian, to really step up into that space. Then it gets a little nuanced in conversations about how much more money are we going to spend. I'll highlight real quickly, Senator Pedersen brought a bill forward, again, another $500 million to streamline the whole behavioral health system. I spoke against it in committee. A terrible thing happened in my community. 2 weeks after that, I went back on the Senate floor, talked to Brittany, and I changed my vote, and that really set me on a path to be more supportive and engaged about behavioral health issues.
Now we're into the closing remarks section. Each candidate now has 2 minutes to present their closing remarks. Candidate Simpson, you'll go first.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, and again, thank you, Vivian. Pleasure being on the stage with you and having this discussion. There's a real clear choice for voters this year. I bring forward 30 years of public service, from the School District Accountability Committee to the County Planning Commission to the Mosquito Control District to Farm Service Agency County Committee to Adams State University Board of Trustees to Rio Grande Basin Roundtable to Inter-Basin Compact Committee. There's a breadth of knowledge and experience about serving the public and my community. I'm very proud of that service. It's been an honor to represent and work for the constituents of Senate District 35 when I started, and now Senate District 6 as I'm on the last 2 years of this first 4-year term. And I'm just passionate about making my communities better, using that expertise. We could go on and on about my experience and the expertise in water, which I think is going to impact all of our 14 counties in Senate District 6, all of Western Colorado, and the San Luis Valley going forward. Presented yesterday at the Colorado River District. I presented at the Southwest Water Conservation District. I presented at the Republican River Water Conservation District. I presented at Adams State, Fort Lewis, here at Mesa, CU, CSU, Denver Water, South Metro Water Supply Authority, Nevada Water Resources, the Nevada General Assembly about the water security challenges in Colorado. That will again rise to the top and will impact healthcare, economic development, education. It's just poised to be this real significant inflection point in the future of Colorado. I would love your support and continue in that space to represent you at the Colorado General Assembly. God bless you all.
Thank you, Cleave. Candidate Smotherman, you have 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Well, I thank you. And again, thank you, Senator Simpson, and thank you, Michael, for moderating. Appreciate it. I've had an amazing life. I survived the perfect storm, if you remember that movie. I faced pirates off the coast of Somalia, and I was there at the BP oil spill when we capped it. I've gone into the fray many times, and I've come out unscathed and wiser. I've worked successfully around this globe, 3 years in India, 3 years in Brazil, Israel, the North Sea, the Gulf of Mexico. I have degrees in history and anthropology. I have over 20 years in the oil and gas industry. I have over 15 years as a hog farmer. I have a very, very diverse background with a lot of skills. My district is incredibly diverse. We have the 2 tribes. We have a large Latino and Hispano and Hispanic population. We have a lot of industry. We do a lot of extraction. We do a lot of agriculture. We do a lot of mining. You need someone in this district that has experience in all of those areas, that can make policy intelligently, working with all of the stakeholders to make sure that our policies work. Okay? It demands a representative capable and willing to approach issues from multiple perspectives, looking for intersectionality, looking for unintended consequences, making sure that they are talking to all the stakeholders and that they have the capability of listening to all the stakeholders, hearing them, really hearing them, and making sure that their policies are working for all of the people of this district, not just big business, not just big pharma, not just big ag, that make sure we're taking care of our agricultural workers. Let's make sure we take care of our waitresses and wait staff, our medical people. We need these people. Our community needs them. If we're going to survive, we need to protect them.
Thank you. I'd like to, from Club 20, I'd like to thank both of our candidates for your passion for SD6, and we wish you both the best in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brittany. There you are.